Blocks away, in Franklin's office on the top floor of the Jarbaldi building in San Francisco, Jebediah Jarbaldi sat in Franklin's seat and coughed before he said, "Anders, this upcoming meeting is of the utmost importance. There must not be any mistakes, do you understand?" "I know." Anders respectfully nodded. "After all this is settled," Jebediah lightly slammed the table in front of him, "this seat is mine, and the CEO's office downstairs is yours." "Thank you, sir." Anders looked gratefully at his uncle. "I will never forget your great kindness." Jebediah looked at Anders and then whispered, "And you must be ruthless. You must never be soft-hearted." If he had been a little more ruthless back when he was Anders' age, he would have been in Franklin's seat much earlier. "I understand." Anders nodded. At that moment, there was a faint sound of an explosion. It came from a long distance away. The glass on the top floor of the building vibrated and made a slight sound. Anders looked in the direction of the window. His eyes were filled with the pleasure of revenge. He had waited for this moment for too long. When he was young, he was just seen as an adopted foster child. Everyone looked down on him. Even his relatives dared to beat him up and insult him. Only his great-uncle treated him well, even better than his grandfather Franklin, who had adopted him. The only two people he was grateful to in the entire Jarbaldi family were Franklin and his great-uncle Jebediah. It was only recently that he found out that he was in fact Franklin's son. Now he knew he was a bastard son, and he knew nobody would take him seriously if they found out too. An adopted son can become something, but a bastard is always just a bastard. At least in the upper class, gossip-ridden society he lived in. A bastard child's a bastard child. If people found out, he would be a walking, talking disgrace to the Jarbaldi name. All of these curses had made him hate Franklin and turn against the man he once looked up to. At the same time, his great-uncle had given him an olive branch. It was his great-uncle who had whispered into his ear about revenge and about the possibilities of working together to dethrone Franklin and ascend to power themselves. Now Anders could rule the Jarbaldi family alongside his great-uncle. Jebediah even pointed out that there were also others from the Jarbaldi family who were willing to support him. This was the chance for Anders to turn the tables and become the king. He wanted to overturn everything. He wanted to take back everything that belonged to him. He wanted to cripple everything that the Jarbaldi family was proud of. And now, he could. Jebediah Jarbaldi narrowed his eyes and looked at the shaking window when he heard the distant explosion. "Is it an earthquake?" "Is it?" Anders averted his gaze. Jebediah didn't know about his plan to blow up the family mausoleum, which sat only about a block south of their office headquarters. He had no feelings for the Jarbaldi family, only hatred. But his feelings for Jebediah were different. That was why he never told his great-uncle about this from the beginning, so the man wouldn't be implicated or tell him to stop. "Let's celebrate tonight after our meeting." Jebediah fondled the armrest of his brother Franklin's chair lovingly. He had longed for this position for far too long. "All right," Anders nodded. At that moment, there were a few knocks on the door. A young woman in professional attire walked in and said, "Sir, your meeting with the shareholders is about to begin." "Got it," Jebediah responded. He stood up and fastened the buttons of his suit jacket in front of him. He also casually pulled at the hem of his shirt. This was his most important day, and there must not be any mistakes. He had to look the part. "Let's go down together," Jebediah said. "Okay," Anders nodded. Just as he was about to follow his older relative, he felt his phone ring in his pocket. Anders rolled his eyes. He paused and said, "Great-uncle, you can go down first. It might not be good for us to appear together. Some shareholders might be suspicious that we're making moves." "Ah, good call." Jebediah nodded. "Your concern is reasonable." He walked out of his brother's office first, and Anders stood back as the female secretary who came in to inform them of the meeting also walked out. Anders closed the door behind her, so he was the only one left in the office. He walked back to the desk. surveying the world outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, and picked up his cell phone in front of a large corner window facing a busy street. "Hello?" "Congratulations." A man's deep and slightly hoarse voice came from the other side of the phone. "Let me call you head of the Jarbaldi family in advance." "Thank you." Anders smiled ever so slightly. He liked being addressed this way. It felt fitting. "After today, our agreement will take effect. I will assist you in becoming the CEO of your family's company, and then you shall fulfill your end of the deal," the man on the other side of the phone said. "Of course," Anders agreed. Although Anders nodded, there was obvious resistance in his eyes. "Has anything else happened recently?" the man asked. "Any new developments?" "Recently?" Anders thought for a while and figured at this point there was nothing to hide. Miss Johnson, Olivia, and the heir to the Jones family, Chris, have come to San Francisco, along with Sven Jorgensen and one of the heirs to the Shook family, Steve. "What?" That person on the other end choked with anger. "But don't worry, I've already dealt with them." Anders' eyes were filled with pride. "They won't be an issue." "Are you sure?" The person on the other side of the phone said sarcastically. "Of course. I assure you I'm very good. It surprises people, but it shouldn't." Anders was not very satisfied with the tone of the person on the other side. "I know." Without saying another word, the person hung up the phone. It was a waste of time to talk to a prideful person like Anders Jarbaldi. The man tossed his phone aside and pushed away the chess piece in front of him with his fingertips. "I need someone in here now," he yelled. Someone immediately walked into the man's study. "Sir, did you call for me?" a butler asked. "Instruct our men in San Francisco to prepare for my contingency plan," the man said in a low voice. "The contingency plan, sir?" the butler repeated nervously. "Did I stutter?" "No, sir." "Then go," the man instructed, his tone icy and gaze frigid. "Right away, sir." After replying, the man's butler turned around and exited his study. Moments later, the girl who was sitting by the window, basking in the sun and reading a book in her study beside the man, raised her head and tucked her hair behind her ear. "Why are you going through with the contingency plan? You were the only one who personally chose to work with Anders. Won't all our efforts be in vain now if you do this?" "Perhaps. Perhaps not," the man muttered as he moved his queen another few spaces on the chessboard. "This Olivia Johnson is quite intriguing, isn't she?" "Are you interested in her?" The girl's eyes filled with envy as her fingers, which were holding the book, bent slightly in tense frustration. She leaned forward. "Are you prepared to—" "Let's play with her first," the man sneered and interjected. "She is Andrew Park's granddaughter after all. She should not disappoint me too much. You and your sadistic little games," the young girl said with a faint smile. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" The man shrugged. "Prepare for the contingency plan. This time, I'll leave it to you to carry it out personally." The man looked at the girl with a mocking gaze. "After all, you and Olivia are already old acquaintances." "Okay," the girl smiled and agreed. Her eyes were full of fighting spirit. "I will not let you down." "I know," the man responded. He looked at the chessboard in front of him with a strange look in his eyes. This game had just begun. Back in San Francisco, Anders' heart was filled with anger when he hung up the phone. But today was the most important moment in his life, and he could not afford to mess up his own plans because of this. After taking a few deep breaths, he put his phone in his pocket and walked out of Franklin Jarbaldi's office with his head held high. After entering the boardroom moments later, Anders smiled as he joined the shareholders. "Sorry to keep you waiting, gents." "What a big shot," someone said disdainfully. He clearly thought highly of himself, they murmured, making the other shareholders wait for so long. "You have no idea," someone across the table said with a smile. "Anders here is personally responsible for turning this company around and making us huge profits. Back when everyone else in the business world had been calling us the sleeping giant of tech and finance, if anyone gets to call himself a big shot, it's Anders." Yeah, one of the older guys said. He's young. Young men get lucky. Let's see him be this successful after a few decades." Everyone laughed at this, and Anders clenched his fist tightly when he heard this. He would remember every humiliation he had ever endured, and he would make his tormentors pay. When he officially became the CEO of his family's company, he would decimate them one by one. Ignoring the sarcasm and snickers around him, Anders stood in front of everyone and signaled his secretary to start playing the deck of slides he had prepared. Then he passed out a report for everyone to receive. When they received the document, only a few of them casually flipped through it at first. They still had sarcastic expressions on their faces. But the more they read, the more earnest they became. Had this young man really made this report? How could it be? Those who had mocked Anders previously had no clue but to look at him seriously. All of them raised their heads to look straight in his eyes. "I believe everyone has now read this document, right?" Anders looked around and asked with a smile. "Good. Now I will explain it to you in detail. This is my plan for the next quarter." Continuing on to the next slide, Anders spoke to his shareholders for the next hour. When he was finished, he proudly asked, "What do you think?" He knew that once he explained his business plan, these shareholders would love it. The reaction in the room was mixed. People frowned, though they had to admit that this plan was very tempting because it would bring in considerably large profits and could be implemented pretty easily without much cost. Anders was clearly a cutthroat businessman, but none of the people in this room would honestly turn down the chance at getting a larger year-end profit margin. Anders put down his cup of water and put his hands on the table. Looking at everyone's expressions, he was excited. If no one were in here, he might even laugh out loud. He had waited for this moment for far too long. At that exact moment, a man suddenly entered the boardroom, and as the room's tightly shut door opened, a round of applause could be heard down the hall. "This plan is a pretty good one," one shareholder told Anders. Another shareholder, however, looked towards the opening door and immediately stood up. He respectfully bowed his head and said, "Sir." "Yes?" Franklin Garibaldi, who was sitting in a wheelchair, replied. He wore a somber, severe expression, and he looked at Anders as though cutting through paper with a knife. Franklin Garibaldi couldn't believe what he was witnessing. He had never looked down on Anders. Although Anders was adopted, he was absolutely treated the same as Jeremy and Devin Garibaldi were. Franklin had loved all three since they were young. He even sometimes paid more attention to Anders. And what was the result? He actually raised such an ingrate with his own hands. "What are you doing here?" Anders looked at Franklin, and then at the group of people who entered behind him, from left to right. Jeremy, Chris, Olivia, Sven. Shouldn't all of them be dead? Weren't they all killed by the explosion? His eyes stopped on Franklin, who was sitting in the middle of his wheelchair. Wasn't he going to die soon after Anders tampered with his medication? The last time he saw him, this old thing still looked like he was about to die. Why did he look so energetic now? What was going on? "Everyone, sit down," Franklin responded and looked at his brother Jebediah at the head of the table. Jebediah quickly collapsed into his chair after his older brother admonished him. To him, there was no need to say anything else. He had lost. He had lost so badly. He was always weaker and more timid than Franklin, and didn't feel he could speak up now. Maybe this is why Franklin had always been the successful one, he told himself. Jeb always lost his nerve when it really mattered. "Anders, you are really ruthless," Sven said. "I know that some people hurt others when they are angry, but a person blowing up his family's own history, their own gravesite? This is the first time I've heard of something like this." "What?" The shareholders were stunned and looked at Anders in disbelief. Anders swallowed his saliva and clenched his fists. "I don't understand what you're talking about." "Since you don't understand, how about we help you sort it out?" Olivia curled her lips and nodded to Jeremy. "Well, for starters," receiving Olivia's signal, Jeremy sent down a document in his hand. "I think everyone should have a look at this first. It's a DNA test we had done a few days ago. You might want to take a look at the results for yourself, Anders." As Anders stepped forward, Olivia said, "It clearly shows that you are not Franklin's biological son, nor are you Jeremy's half-brother, nor are you even related to the Garibaldi family line at all." Olivia raised her chin and added, "Your biological father is another person, meaning your mom is just a liar who shamed Jeremy's grandfather into thinking you were one of his, and out of the kindness of his heart, he adopted you." Olivia could see from reading Franklin's mind that he was actually so ashamed to hear that Anders' mom had slept with both Franklin and his son that he had never even asked her to take a paternity test. The whole thing made him shrink with disgust, so he tried not to think of it. But Olivia didn't mention that part out loud. "No, you are lying to me," Anders said. He was stunned. "Lying to you?" Olivia sneered and looked at Jeremy. "Why would we lie about this?" Jeremy threw the DNA test in front of Anders. "See for yourself if you don't believe us." Anders immediately flipped through the DNA test lengthy report. The data on each page seemed to be mocking him. "There's no way." Anders threw the report in his hand onto the table. "Nonsense, this report was clearly tampered with." "Why don't you ask your own great-uncle?" Olivia sneered and said, "Maybe he knows what the truth is. Maybe your mom, Veronica, confessed to him the truth once, and he never told anyone because he saw that he could try to use you to ascend to power in your family." She knew from reading Jebediah's mind that this was the case. "Great-uncle Jebediah?" Anders turned his head and looked at his great-uncle, who was sitting across the table with his shoulders hunched down. "Jebediah, I'll only believe in you. Tell me, did my mother ever confess to you?" "Anders, just forget it." His great-uncle shook his head with a sneer. "It's all in the past. It's all over." They had lost their bid for power. Jebediah knew. He had lost. Anders' heart skipped a beat. What did this mean? Then whose son was he? Who was his father? Why had his mother lied and told him he was actually Franklin's son? Did she just want him to believe that so he would feel he was destined to take over the family business? Or did she just want Franklin to believe Anders really was a Garibaldi? "Anders, you destroyed the gravesite of the Garibaldi family and attempted to kill Franklin too." Olivia stared at him angrily. "Why go against the very family that took you in?" "Wow," one of the shareholders said. "Franklin treated you so well too, you ungrateful boy." Everyone frowned and made comments around the table. They couldn't believe what was happening. Infighting was normal in the wealthiest families, but actual murder? Actual intentional malice? It was unheard of. When Anders heard these words, his eyes turned dark as he stared ahead. He looked at Olivia and said, "Do you know?" "Know what?" Olivia tilted her father and asked with a smile. "What do you want to know?" "Who exactly is my father?" Anders stared at Olivia. "Does it even matter?" Olivia sneered. "Look at what you've already done. Is it really meaningful to ask that question now? Anders, what awaits you is life in prison. You will never see the light of day. No matter who your father is, you will not see him again, you know that? You will not see him or any of these people again." Anders paused. No, that cannot be. He could not even go to prison. He was still young and he had so much he wanted to accomplish. He was just getting started. As he thought of this, Anders' eyes focused. Then suddenly, he pulled an assistant beside him and took a letter opener to hold up to her throat as he grabbed her, saying, "All of you, get out of my way, otherwise I'll cut her artery. Get out of my way, nobody tries to stop me or she dies." Seeing this, everyone stepped back and could only part so for Anders and the poor assistant. Olivia wanted to use her powers right then and there to stop him, but she couldn't risk hurting the secretary, or getting something wrong and nudging Anders' hand the wrong way, and accidentally nicking the poor woman's neck. Besides, Liv was still so exhausted from using her powers earlier that she worried about being able to use them again now. She had to replenish and rest. "Anders, it's useless, just give up," Olivia had said instead, hoping she could perhaps reason with him and get him to give up the girl that way. Anders moved erratically, using the girl as a shield in case anyone tried to take him out. God, He was really stubborn, Olivia thought. Nothing is useless. If you don't give it a try, how do you know what's possible? Anders gritted his teeth and looked at Olivia. Olivia, you are the only variable that I have miscalculated. If you weren't here, there would not be so many problems. I should have let him kill you from the beginning. Let who kill me from the beginning? Olivia asked. Who was Anders referring to? Who is he talking about? Chris asked, perhaps more concerned than even Olivia. Who is this mysterious person whose identity eluded Chris? Shut up, Anders yelled. No one is allowed to follow us. Without answering Olivia and Chris, Anders held the assistant close and exited the boardroom. Nobody follows us, or she dies. The girl held Anders' arm with both hands as her wide eyes darted around frantically, searching for a source of solace in the midst of her fear. Her fingers clung tightly to Anders' arm, trembling with each passing moment, seeking comfort in locking eyes with anyone who would look at her. But when she tried to say help, Anders held her tighter and said, Shut up. She went pale with fear. It was as if the world had suddenly become a daunting, unfamiliar place. Anders held her and entered the CEO's exclusive elevator. Then, once they reached the ground floor and the elevator doors opened, he pushed the female secretary out of the elevator doors. After he did, Anders' hands trembled. As he rushed through the lobby, he immediately dialed his mystery partner's number, but nobody picked up and it went to voicemail. Damn it! Damn it! Anders threw his phone down hard. Anders! Veronica screeched. Originally, she had come to the Jarbaldi office headquarters to find her son, but she was surprised to see him running away in a hurry. She wanted to chase after him quickly, but her ankle was still sore from when she had sprained it chasing him at the hospital. It was so painful that she had walked a few steps and quickly grimaced in pain. Anders couldn't stop caring about his mother, Veronica. He had to get away, so instead he rushed out of the Jarbaldi building and ran across the street. At the same time, Olivia and the others raced out of the building and tried to chase after Anders. Olivia spotted Anders as he was about to run across the street. She planted her feet on the ground and tried to concentrate on Anders, though he was darting through traffic, so she couldn't quite lock in on him. Still, she tried to zero in on him so she could use her powers to stop him. After a moment, she gave up and chased him. When they got to a desolate part of the street, she thought, okay, it's now or never. But before Olivia could do anything, a white car with a foreign license plate suddenly rushed out and plowed Anders down. Before Olivia could even react, the white car sped off without even stopping. Ah! Anders screamed. The sudden collision sent him flying 20 feet in the air. Holy hell! Olivia took a deep breath. The collision was so sudden it stunned her. Anders! Someone called out. Olivia turned to see Anders' mom, Veronica, who had also witnessed the car knock her son down. Veronica promptly sprinted towards him. At that moment, the pain in her feet became inconsequential. This was her son, the one she had carried for 10 months in her womb and for years afterward. Olivia watched Veronica run across the street. The collision had made her recall the aching, dull pain of her own death in her previous life. She could feel the impact of the car on her body from when Mark and Pamela had run over her back then, and she struggled to catch her breath. Lying prone on the frigid pavement, Anders gazed at the approaching figure. The world before him slowly turned hazy. With his mouth agape, he tried to eke out an abundance of words, questions begging to be voiced. His father. Who exactly was he? And why didn't a child have the right to choose his parents? Anders! Veronica witnessed her son vomiting blood and her mind went blank. She tried to run faster but stumbled and fell. Stretching out her hand, she grasped her son's trembling fingers. Tears filled Veronica's eyes. Don't be afraid. Mama's here. Anders moved his mouth, but words struggled to come out. Within seconds, before he could make a sound, another white car with a foreign license plate rushed towards them. Be careful! Olivia instinctively shouted from where she walked. Just as Veronica was about to grab Anders' hand, the car sped past her, straight into her son's body. and she was forced to stumble backward as blood splattered in front of her. Her eyes went from shock to despair, pupils contracting. Veronica's face turned pale as she looked at her son crushed beneath the wheel and let out a heart-wrenching wail. Ah! The gloomy sky was shattered by a sudden clap of thunder. Moments later, the rain poured down, mingling with the blood-soaked ground. Ah! Wails echoed across the sky. Closing her eyes, Olivia turned her head, unable to bear witness any longer. Her temples throbbed with pain. Chris reached out, pulling her close, letting her head rest on his shoulder, and he frowned. "We have to find out who did this," Chris whispered. Don't worry, Liv, we will find out." The infighting in the Garibaldi family had culminated with Anders' tragic demise. The next day, an uncommonly sunny day dawned. The family tried to begin moving past the previous day's bloodshed and bring closure to the grim chapter in their life, however difficult. Franklin personally invited Olivia and the others to a solemn memorial for the relatives whose plots had been lost, and nobody even uttered Anders' name. After lunch, Franklin had someone summons Olivia into his study. In solemn silence, Franklin spoke first. "You must think my family is terrible." "Nothing surprises me about privileged families," Olivia replied, shaking her head. She forced a smile. "It's a cruel world at the top." "Cruel?" Franklin grinned and remarked. "Is it truly so heartless? How would you characterize the actions of the patriarchs of the 7 great families?" Olivia suppressed a smile and locked eyes with Franklin. "How would you characterize them, Franklin?" "The business world mirrors a battlefield," Franklin declared. "Mercy is a luxury we cannot afford." "What is it you're implying?" Olivia's smile was feigned. "Your younger brother, Jebediah, may be naive, but you can speak your mind." Franklin drummed his wheelchair with a finger. "I can't bear youngsters like you. You always say what's on your mind." Olivia remained silent. "I heard from Jeremy," Franklin told Olivia. "I don't have many years left." "Indeed," Olivia nodded. "Will you hold it against him?" "Why would I? For what?" Franklin smiled. "A true man knows how to make swift, decisive choices. These final few years of life will have been worthwhile." "As long as you believe that," Olivia concurred. "I've lived many years. It's unwise to take things too seriously at my age, or to expect to live forever at this point." Franklin waved dismissively. "The past matters will be resolved. Jeremy will be in charge of the Garibaldi family from now on." "That's for the best," Olivia beamed. "You deserve a peaceful remainder of your days." "A peaceful remainder?" Franklin's eyes glinted mysteriously. "Let's not discuss that. You, little girl, have quite the talent for stirring up trouble." Seeing Olivia's tacit acknowledgement, he continued, "You once saved me, so I'll share a truth I've learned with you." "Please do," Olivia nodded. Franklin uttered the words lightly, but with heft. "One can't dwell in the past forever. You young ones have a long journey ahead. Why not look forward?" "Franklin, what good does looking forward do when there are things from the past that still deserve a reckoning?" Olivia replied with a smile. Franklin fell silent. "To avoid being preyed upon, one must possess a great deal of strength." Olivia smiled. "The blood of the Park family courses through my veins. That's immutable." "You are a member of the Johnson family," Franklin corrected her. Olivia's smile grew even sweeter. "Let's see which Johnson family that is." Franklin was taken aback, studying Olivia with astonishment. "You aim to establish your own legacy? Not follow in your Grandpa Jack's footsteps?" Olivia shrugged. "Why not? You don't think I can?" Franklin stared blankly at Olivia, which prompted Olivia to laugh heartily. "Sir, respectfully, if I were you, I would focus on how good you feel now. Anders and your brother won't disturb you any further." With that, Olivia exited the study. Leaning on his wheelchair, Franklin frowned and gazed at the sunny day outside his window. He couldn't gauge how long this kind of weather would hold. Clearing his throat a few times, he furrowed his brow and mumbled, "Let it be. Let it be." He knew that in the long run, he didn't have much time left. The concerns of his family after his passing would have to be left to those who came after. It might be better to consider how to make the most of his remaining days. As she prepared to leave the Garibaldi estate, Olivia let out a long sigh. Finally, this matter of the Garibaldi succession had found its resolution. She had come to San Francisco to take a well-deserved rest. That hadn't happened. But today, maybe she could finally get some semblance of peace. Hoping to find some, she had invited Jeremy and Steve for a leisurely tour of the city. "Finished with your chat?" Steve stretched and asked. "Yeah, all done," Olivia replied. "Let's go." "All right, then." Steve placed a hand on Jeremy's shoulder. "Jer, San Francisco is your playground today. I say we celebrate being alive and put all our trauma behind us, and just try to eat, drink, and have a blast all over the city." Easier said than done, but I suppose it doesn't hurt to try. Jeremy lifted the corner of his mouth and exchanged a glance with Steve, who nodded. He knew the three of them needed to do whatever they could to put the past few days behind them. He had also told Steve about his feelings for Olivia before Olivia arrived, hoping to focus on that instead of his family's issues. He intended to confess his feelings to Olivia once more today. Steve assured him of his support, but Jeremy felt that as long as Steve didn't cause any trouble, he'd be content. "Let's go." Olivia, accompanied by the two, chatted and laughed her way through the Garibaldi family's compound. After a moment, Olivia glanced back at the grandiose old buildings around her. This time, the weight she felt before was absent. Whether it was due to the fact that the family's fighting had finally been resolved, or her assistance to the Garibaldi family this time, she couldn't say. But the malevolent hostility had vanished. Olivia's lips curled into a joyful smile as a refreshing breeze caressed her face. "What are you pondering?" Jeremy tilted his head inquisitively. "Nothing." Olivia shook her head. Some things didn't need to be voiced. It sufficed for her to know them herself. At that moment, Chris and Sven entered the garden. Observing Olivia and Jeremy sharing a smile, Chris's brow furrowed slightly. "Wow." Sven raised an eyebrow, giving Chris a nudge. "Chris, what's the plan?" Chris snorted coldly. No one could steal his fiancée away from him. He approached with purpose, leaving Olivia momentarily unsure where to direct her gaze. Ever since she realized Chris had genuine feelings for her, she couldn't help but feel a tad uneasy. "Well, it seems like things in San Francisco with your family are resolved," Chris told Jeremy. Then he looked at Olivia. "You should come with me," Chris asserted, stopping in front of her. Olivia was already uncomfortable in Chris's presence. Why would she want to go with him? "I'd like to stay in San Francisco a bit longer. I'll return to New York with Steve and Jeremy when the time comes." Displeasure flickered in his eyes. Chris reached out to take Olivia's hand, but she instinctively stepped back to evade him. Chris narrowed his eyes slightly. This girl was clearly determined to challenge him. "Chris, as you can see, Olivia prefers to stay for now." Steve chimed in with a smile. "If you're busy, why not just head back first, ahead of us? I'll make sure she gets back safely." He had, after all, prepared a series of strategies to assist Jeremy with his confession today. Chris surveyed the smiling Steve, then glanced at Jeremy. Finally, he looked at Olivia, who was evidently avoiding him. He quirked the corner of his mouth. Did she intend to force him to resort to drastic measures? Seeing Chris at a disadvantage, Sven felt a touch of awkwardness. Just as he was about to intervene, he heard Chris say, "All right." Jeremy and Steve exchanged guarded glances. Since when had Chris become so agreeable? "Sven," Chris addressed him, "cancel the flight to Atlantic City that you booked for me and Olivia this afternoon." "Are you sure, though?" Sven hesitated, glancing at Olivia. Was Chris angry? Olivia remained silent. She was merely puzzled. Why did Chris suddenly mention Atlantic City? Yeah, come on, Sven. We'll go see Polly ourselves, Chris declared before turning to leave. Wait, who? Olivia was taken aback, immediately tugging at Chris's sleeve. You'll go see who? Didn't you decline my offer? Chris arched an eyebrow, addressing Olivia. My dog, Polly, in Atlantic City? Olivia asked. Chris huffed. Wyatt Newman returned from overseas recently. He owns a new casino in Atlantic City. You can find Polly there. Wait, seriously? Olivia's eyes sparkled with hope. She wondered whether Polly had put on weight, and if she was in good health, and if she ate well and slept soundly. Seeing Olivia's expression, Chris felt a twinge of discomfort. What was this feeling? Living a life worse than a dog? Sighing inwardly, Jeremy recognized that his confession would have to wait for another opportunity. Hey, Steve shook his head with regret, patting Jeremy's shoulder. Brother, it's okay. You'll just need to work harder, okay? Chris seems to have a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Jeremy brushed off Steve's hand without saying a word. At that moment, a woman rushed towards Olivia from the corner of the estate. She staggered in front of Olivia, stunning everyone. With determination, she stood up and clung to Olivia's arms. Trembling, Olivia stared at the woman, taken aback. Veronica? She asked, barely recognizing the woman. The transformation was staggering. In just one night, Veronica had changed from an elegant, noble woman to this disheveled, wide-eyed, terrifying, unkempt figure. Her clothing remained the same as yesterday, but it was unclear if she had lost her high heels or was not wearing them at all. Her feet were clad in tattered, dusty stockings. The ostentatious pearl necklace around her neck still gleamed, but because of her clothing seemed dirty and shredded. Now it seemed to be the cruelest irony in the world. Veronica gazed at Olivia, who returned the gaze. Olivia had witnessed Anders' pitiful demise with her own eyes yesterday. Have you seen Anders? Veronica implored Olivia, clutching her arms. Olivia listened, rendered momentarily speechless. She was confused about what was happening. Veronica had seen Anders die, and yet here she was, asking where he was. What was going on? Did you see my son? Veronica squealed. When she saw that Olivia did not reply, she shook her arm forcefully as she asked, I just saw him. I saw him walk over there with my own eyes. Did you see him? Olivia's throat felt slightly sore. Do you mean right here? Veronica looked around suspicious. He was just here, just now. I saw it. You must have seen him too. He is such a good, obedient boy. Veronica loosened her grip on Olivia and pointed at her waist. He is 10 years old. He's about this tall. He's very obedient. Veronica repeated. Did you see him? Did you see my little boy Anders? No. Olivia looked at Veronica and shook her head. She didn't know what to say to the woman. Veronica was clearly suffering some sort of psychotic break after seeing her only son get hit by a car. It's like her brain wouldn't let her believe it. How could it be? Veronica's eyes became empty. She shook her head and looked around before walking in another direction. Anders? Anders, sweetie, where are you? It's time to go home and eat now, sweetheart. Everyone looked at Veronica limping back towards her villa and felt pangs of sympathy for the woman. Jeez. Sven let out a long sigh. She's gone crazy just like that. Maybe she was asking for it. Steve sighed. She had raised her son in such a miserable, precarious situation to begin with, using him as a tool to get more power and status. It would be strange if she did not go crazy after all she had done. Olivia had been silent for a few minutes. The tragedy of Anders' family was partially caused by the man who had been working with Anders all this time. But who was that man? Even Chris could not find out. Let's go, Chris said. Okay. Olivia nodded, not knowing what else she could do here. She looked at Veronica, who was retreating further and further away. I have to become stronger, Olivia thought, and more focused. When she first reincarnated into her former self, she she felt the only people she had to defeat in order to relive her life the right way this time were Monica and Rachel, Pamela and Mark, and a few others who stood in her way and ruined her life the last time. But now she was seeing that the more successful and powerful she became in this life, the more she found herself on the radar of powerful people, and the more enemies she encountered. She wanted to beat all the people who were plotting against her, so that she could ensure a happy, thriving life for those who were counting on her. If not, the next person to meet their demise might be her, and it could be her own mother who was walking around like a crazy person, calling her name out in vain. Only when she became stronger could she protect all the people she cherished. After a short farewell, Olivia left the Jarbaldi family estate with Chris and Sven, a strange, sorrowful taste in her mouth after the events she had experienced here. Back at the estate, when dusk arrived, a servant supported Anders' mom, Veronica, who was covered in fallen leaves and weeds from wandering around all night looking for her son. Veronica was still muttering, "Where is Anders? Where did he go?" "Madam, your son hasn't finished school yet." A trace of pity flashed across the maid's eyes, so she decided it would be kinder simply to lie to her boss. "Oh, he hasn't finished school yet." Veronica nodded her head. "Of course, Anders went to school today." "Yes, exactly." The maid nodded and replied. "Then ask the kitchen to prepare some dishes that Anders likes to eat. Something yummy and filling for breakfast, and don't put anything spicy in it. My child's stomach is not able to handle that." The maid pursed her lips and tears welled up in her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." "Yes. Yes." Veronica nodded and then felt relieved. "Anders went to school and will be back in a while." The maid did not know how long this lie could last. How long could she let Veronica wait for her son who would never come back? Suddenly, a girl dressed in a simple white dress appeared at Veronica's door and stopped Veronica's maid. Excuse me, hello," she said as she tapped and knocked on the open door. "Yes?" the maid asked, stopping in her tracks as she looked at the girl. "I am Olga from the Jorgensen family." The girl slightly raised her chin and asked, "May I ask if Chris Jones and Sven are here?" "Oh, the maid nodded. "They were originally here, but they had already left earlier this afternoon. I heard that they went to Atlantic City." "What?" Olga was annoyed. It wasn't easy for her to chase them to San Francisco, and now she had to find out they'd actually taken off and run to Atlantic City. She rolled her eyes. "Damn it." Olga angrily stomped her foot. "Well, guess I gotta chase them there then," she thought angrily. At around the same time, Chris's plane from San Francisco landed at the private airport just outside of Atlantic City. Olivia could not help but tighten her jacket the moment she got off the plane. The temperature in Atlantic City seemed to be considerably colder than in San Francisco, by at least 10 or 15 degrees. The orange sunlight scattered across the entire airport, accompanied by a chilly breeze. "Let's go. I've booked a hotel. We should go get changed," Sven said. "Atlantic City will be even colder at night." "All right," Olivia nodded and frowned slightly. She didn't think that she would end up in Atlantic City on this trip, so the clothes she brought weren't very warm. "Actually, you know what?" Chris looked at Sven and said, "Why don't you take our bags to our hotel? I'm going to take her to buy some new clothes. She might need something a little warmer than what she has. We will meet at the hotel later for dinner." "Got it." Sven made a little salute and smiled. Olivia glanced at Chris. She hadn't expected him to be so thoughtful, or for him to anticipate exactly what she needed. Before she could respond, Sven took off, and Chris led Olivia to the taxi stand on the main boulevard outside the airport, since he had sent Sven away in his private car. As they waited in line for a cab, Chris pulled Olivia into his arms, hugging her. Olivia was about to break free when she heard Chris whispering in her ear, "Are you warmer now?" Her eyes moved ever so slightly before she nodded her head. "Yes." "That's good then." Chris smiled and held her in his arms. Soon they reached the front of the line, and just as they were about to get into the next available taxi, they were stopped by two strong men. "Sorry, we've got to use this cab first. You guys wait for the next one." "Excuse me, who do you think you are?" Chris scoffed. Before the two men could answer, a gorgeous woman in high heels walked up behind them and said demurely, "Oh, I'm so sorry, handsome. But do you mind doing me a favor? I just need to take this car as I'm late for a meeting, and I'll just die if I don't make it in time." The woman looked like she was in her early 20s, and she wore large sunglasses to cover most of her face. The sound of her plump lips knocking up against her white teeth roused Chris. She was wearing a new Dior dress and held a limited edition Louis Vuitton handbag. Olivia narrowed her eyes and looked at the handbag in the woman's hand. She knew from her past life that this handbag would soar in price in the coming year and a half. Olivia herself had wanted to get one herself, but it had already sold out everywhere, and she did not manage to get it. She didn't expect to see someone with it here. The woman saw Olivia staring at her handbag and smiled proudly. She deliberately shook it a few times and said to Chris, "Thank you so much for letting us take this taxi, handsome." Then she took out her business card from Louis Vuitton's bag and kissed it so that she left a lip print on it. Then she handed it to Chris and said, "Here, my phone number." Olivia felt a pang of jealousy, but forced herself to turn away, trying to ignore the feeling. "Sorry, we've got an important meeting too. Thanks for understanding." Chris replied to the woman and glanced at Olivia, who smiled. The beautiful woman in front of Chris, Naomi Bancroft, was rendered speechless. She was a well-known model in Europe, and she couldn't believe this guy was treating her like she was some average, basic girl. Her day had gone terribly. First, she had her car trouble on the way here. And now this handsome young guy wasn't going to let her cut in front of him to take his taxi to make it to her meeting. What was going on? Naomi was used to having doors opened for her because of her beauty. "Can you guys hurry up?" The taxi driver's patience wore thin. It was peak rush hour and time equaled money for him. "Naomi, we're running out of time," another person caught up and said. This person, John, donned a black and white suit. His hair was slicked back. "Liam Blanc doesn't wait for anybody, and if you want to make it to New York and Paris Fashion Week—" "I know." Naomi impatiently cut him off, glancing at Olivia and Chris. She signaled for two burly men to intervene and turned to get into the cab. "Wait for me a few seconds," Chris whispered in Olivia's ear before releasing her arm. Stepping forward, he swiftly kicked the man. After dispatching the large man on the left, he pivoted and delivered another kick. Regaining his balance, he pulled Naomi out of the car. Observing Naomi about to retort, Chris promptly displayed his clenched fist. Naomi witnessed her companions topple to the ground and could only grit her teeth. "You're insane." Chris sneered and extended his hand toward Olivia. "Come on, get in the car." Olivia blinked, then was guided into the taxi by Chris, all as Naomi glared at her, incensed through her sunglasses. Watching the taxi depart, Naomi's frustration boiled over, prompting her to stomp the ground loudly. "What the hell am I paying you idiots for? If someone can just toss you around like rag dolls? Oh, you're so incompetent." The two men tried in vain to defend themselves. "That kid's kicks were lightning fast," one said, "and he was stronger than he looked." At that moment, another taxi pulled up, and Naomi prepared to enter the car. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" a man shouted. He was part of a family of 3 that had been waiting for a taxi behind Chris and Olivia. "Are you addicted to cutting in line or something?" "Good one," Naomi scoffed, rolling her eyes. "John, give me some money," she commanded her agent. She couldn't be bothered with more words. With that said, she promptly threw some money that John handed her at the family. "Here, take some cash to shut up," she muttered before entering the taxi. Time was of the essence. Her 2 bodyguards promptly followed suit, never straying far from Naomi's side. Once the car door shut, the bigger bodyguard, John, pulled out a stack of $100 bills and handed a few more to the protesting family of 3. For your trouble, he told the father, and the family of 3 said nothing more. After the car started, the driver glanced at the person in the mirror and asked, "Where are we headed?" "Directly to Queen of Hearts Casino," John, seated in the front passenger seat, stated after entering the car. "All right," the driver responded. In the back seat, Naomi retrieved a perfumed handkerchief to shield her mouth and nose. This wretched gasoline odor in the car made her queasy. "Naomi, Liam is known for his generosity. Put on a good show tonight. Once this matter is settled, then Fashion Week—" Before John could finish, Naomi cut him off. "I said I get it, John." Naomi frowned slightly. After so many years in the industry, she understood this kind of thing. John heard Naomi and could only turn his head, falling silent in embarrassment. He discreetly rolled his eyes. Sleeping with a few more investors wasn't enough. Now her expectations were soaring. John, after all his years as an agent, had seen all sorts of models. Forget it, he couldn't be bothered. As long as he made money, it was fine. Naomi snorted coldly. She recalled the encounter with that couple. She'd never been treated like that before. With this in mind, Naomi gritted her teeth and muttered, "They better not cross my path again." She definitely wouldn't let them off easy. Elsewhere, in Atlantic City, Olivia and Chris had already emerged from their taxi and made their way into a clothing store. Chris promptly set about finding suitable clothes for the weather. In addition to finding 2 hefty jackets and wool sweaters for Olivia, he also picked out an upscale dress, crafted from crushed velvet, and a fashionable mohair jacket to wear over it. "An evening gown, Chris, really?" Olivia was a bit puzzled. Wasn't she here to meet her dog? What sort of fancy party was there to attend? "It's a nice dress, not an evening gown," he retorted. "Besides, you're not planning on looking like a high school student in the casino, are you? It's clear you're underage. They won't let you in," Chris said with a smile. Olivia pursed her lips. "Fine," she thought, conceding his point. After going into the fitting rooms with Chris's selection of clothing, she finally stepped out a few minutes later, dressed in formal attire. Olivia raised her head to look at Chris. "So, how do I look?" "Not bad." Chris had also changed into a tailored suit. "What do you think if I go with this?" He looked darn good, but Olivia wasn't about to stroke his ego. That was already plenty big. "Not bad," she said nonchalantly. "Come on, let's go." After leaving the clothing store, Chris took Olivia to get her makeup done and hairstyled. When they realized they were running a bit late, Chris told Sven to pick them up at the salon. Olivia just finished getting her hair done as Sven drove a striking red Porsche up to the salon entrance. Following Chris's instructions, the hairstylist aimed to give Olivia a more mature look, putting her hair back into a low, elegant bun. With this, she looked more adult. The dress, which was more conservative while still showing off Olivia's feminine figure, helped as well. "Wow!" Sven exaggeratedly raised his eyebrows. "Little lady, I didn't expect you to look this good." "It's all an illusion," Olivia said with a smile. Only she knew how much effort went into achieving this effect. In her previous life, she'd worn this kind of dress many times as she got older, and even more extravagant ones. Now that Sven teased her, she didn't think much of it. However, Chris's expression clearly soured. Chris picked up the short white coat Olivia had taken off earlier and put it back on her. He looked at the snug fit and instructed, "Don't take it off." Having said that, Chris turned and shot Sven a stern look. Sven looked away guilty and mumbled, "Don't worry, I wasn't looking at her like that. You can relax." With a disdainful snort, Chris took hold of Olivia's hand, not giving her any chance to object. He led her out of the salon, and Sven quickly followed. Olivia stole a glance at Chris from the corner of her eye. Despite his territorial behavior, she had to admit that Chris's actions inadvertently hit her soft spot. This kind of obstinacy, while not entirely mature, held a unique charm of its own, because it revealed how much this cocky, self-assured guy really felt about her, and how vulnerable his affection for her made him. The corner of Olivia's mouth involuntarily curled into a smile that was hard to conceal. He really is sort of chivalrous and protective, she thought, and he's always looking out for me. Watching the two of them walk ahead, Sven shook his head and muttered, puppy love. When will they stop playing games and just admit they have feelings for each other? Slowly trailing behind, Sven grumbled as he walked. Hey, Chris, I've got the car keys. What's the rush? What's the rush? Come on, Chris called back. We've got places to be, Sven. Within 30 minutes, the three of them arrived at the Queen of Hearts Casino in the center of the Atlantic City Strip. The staff at the entrance of the casino scrutinized Olivia for a moment, appearing hesitant. Olivia tried to appear as mature as she could, as if somehow standing up straighter and not smiling might help her achieve that effect. But somehow it worked because she was soon allowed to enter. Once inside the casino, Sven gave an appreciative nod while Olivia smiled. But Chris's brow furrowed, his displeasure evident. He glanced at Olivia, then firmly gripping her waist, he whispered in her ear, Just remember what we're here for, okay? Olivia met his gaze upon hearing this. After all, she was here to see her dog Polly again. How could she forget? Did Chris suddenly think she was going to be swept up in the casino atmosphere or something? Sven turned away, suppressing a chuckle. Clearing his throat, he added, We've made it here. We might as well enjoy ourselves while we wait for Wyatt Newman and the dog to show up. I'll go exchange some cash for some chips. All right, Chris agreed. Prior to their arrival, he had been in touch with Wyatt, who was presently tied up in a meeting. He assured them he'd join them later, leaving them free to indulge in some gambling while they waited. A few rounds wouldn't hurt, Chris figured. While Sven went to get chips, Olivia took a look around the casino and then lifted her head slightly to address Chris. So, Wyatt Newman, the guy who Polly originally belonged to, owns this casino? Yes, Chris confirmed. Wyatt had recently opened this casino. And where is he? Olivia inquired earnestly. How can I meet him? She couldn't see Polly until she saw him, and she was eager to see her husky. Even if Polly had always belonged to him, Olivia always felt like Polly was hers, and she was flooded with excitement just thinking about her. Chris glanced at Olivia, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. Isn't it simple? Turning to Sven, who returned with chips in hand, he quipped, If you place a substantial bet in the casino, Wyatt won't be able to sit still. He'll probably stop his meeting early and naturally come to you. Oh. Olivia narrowed her eyes slightly, glancing around. I can give it a try. Have at it, Chris said. He released the hand that he had wrapped around Olivia's waist and picked up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter's tray. He looked at Olivia with interest, wondering how her luck fared in matters of money. I know I'm not of age yet, but it doesn't hurt to play the part. He winked while sipping the champagne. Right, Olivia smirked. She wandered through the crowd, observing the boisterous gamblers, the tuxedo-clad dealers, and the waitstaff carrying cocktail glasses to high rollers and penny slot players alike. Atlantic City boasted a flourishing local tourism and entertainment industry. Describing it as a city obsessed with glitz and glam wasn't an exaggeration. There was wealth aplenty within these walls, provided one had the skill to claim it. In Atlantic City, there were lots of casinos, but Queen of Hearts Casino stood out because of its expansive size and top-notch facilities. It was also brand new, and now that she thought about it, Olivia remembered reading about how it was closely tied to the influential figure backing it, the Newman family's diamond tycoon. She had forgotten Wyatt came from this family. What's caught your eye? Sven handed a stack of chips to Olivia. What are you going to play first? I didn't see anything that jumped out at me, Olivia replied, taking the chips and turning them over in her hands. Well, I took out the same amount of money for each of us, Sven affirmed, providing another set to Chris. Let's see who ends up winning the most, and who ends up with nothing. Best of luck, little lady. Ah, Chris smiled, glancing at Olivia. Don't underestimate her. Olivia smiled, eyeing a relatively vacant table nearby, where people were playing a dice game she had never encountered before. I'm gonna go play at that table. Oh? Chris and Sven turned their attention to the table Olivia was eyeing. Then let's go take a look. Olivia took the lead and approached. As the previous players left, she occupied an empty seat. May I? The man seated behind her said with a smile. Offer you a friendly tip. Please, go ahead, Olivia replied. The person in this seat has been losing all night, he informed her, smiling. It's been occupied 4 or 5 times. Anyone who sits here ends up losing. Well, Olivia laughed, then I'd like to give it a try. Let's see if I can turn things around. Seeing that Olivia paid no heed to his advice, the man said nothing more and turned his attention to the dealer. The dealer regarded Olivia. You're new here, right? Do you know the rules? We'll figure it out as we go along, Olivia responded nonchalantly, shrugging her shoulders. All right, the dealer said, unfazed. He'd been in the business for a long time and had encountered all sorts of players. Besides, this was just a straightforward dice game. The odds were similar to those of a coin toss, and it was a popular game in Atlantic City casinos. Olivia rested her chin in her hand, intently watching the dealer deftly shake the dice cup. The dice rattled within. The players at the table held their breath, fixated on the dealer's movements. Without any elaborate gestures, the dealer placed the dice cup on the table, then lifted it slightly so only he could see that it had landed face up on a number. Then he extended his hands and said, Okay, please place your bets. Olivia locked eyes with the dealer, her head slightly tilted. She focused her mind, and a slight smile played at the corner of her mouth. She could read his mind and see what number the dice had landed on, and she pushed all her chips to the designated area in front of her. Wow! Sven nearly choked on his champagne. Little lady, you've got some nerve. Olivia chuckled. It wasn't about nerve. She was using her powers, but ultimately this was simply a means to an end, to see Polly faster. At worst, she could simply return the rest of the chips to Wyatt after converting the initial capital back for Sven. All she really wanted was to see Polly. Miss, the man seated beside Olivia was about to say something in an attempt to dissuade her from betting all her chips. However, upon observing Olivia's expression, he thought better of it and raised his hands in surrender. Maybe it wasn't his concern. The dealer looked at Olivia, momentarily taken aback. He glanced at the chips on the table, his shoulders twitching slightly. But he told himself she was just experiencing a stroke of luck. He uncovered the dice cup, announced the roll, and revealed the outcome. Everyone gazed at Olivia in astonishment. Congratulations, the man beside Olivia remarked, smiling as he looked at the double stack of chips before her. Thank you, Olivia nodded. One could easily argue that luck played a role in her initial success, but when Olivia continued winning consistently over the next 20 rounds, the managers on the casino floor began to take notice. The dealer eyed Olivia warily, his brow furrowing. Deep down, he suspected something was amiss, but he himself had been dealing the cards, and Olivia was seated the furthest from him. He scrutinized her eyes, considering the possibility of special contact lenses. He'd heard rumors of expert card counters and cards, but there were actually people who could somehow discern the dice's outcome? No, that was the stuff of movies, and this girl was just a young adult. Could it all be luck? That seemed implausible. Just moments ago, he'd rolled a 5, and the young female player had promptly bet on 5. This couldn't be chalked up to mere chance, could it? He didn't want to be accused of working with her to cheat. With this in mind, the dealer discreetly pressed a button on the table, prompting immediate attention from the higher-ups. Olivia read the dealer's mind as he pressed the button and offered a smile. Finally, she thought. Now she'd gotten everyone's attention. It was only a matter of time now before Wyatt would make its appearance. A buzzer went off in the security control room at the Queen of Hearts casino. A slew of security members watched monitors connected to the several dozen cameras on the casino floor below. But one camera in particular had caught their attention. "How could she be winning every single time?" asked one of the guards with a hushed voice. "I don't understand it." "What seems to be the problem here, gentlemen?" said a gruff voice. A large man with broad shoulders stood behind them, seemingly out of nowhere. "We were just about to alert you, Big Sal," the other guard blurted out. As Queen of Hearts Casino's head of security, Big Sal was not a man to be messed with. The guard knew he had already made the mistake of not telling him about it sooner. "Looks like we might have trouble at dice table 4, the sheepish man continued. Big Sal leaned in close, his eyes narrowing at the screen. He watched as Olivia won yet another round of dice. He could see the sweat dripping down the dealer's brow from here. "Think we got a cheater on our hands, huh?" he scoffed. "That's the thing, sir. We're not sure how she could be doing it." Big Sal considered this for some time. That particular dealer had a habit of calling in emergencies over the smallest thing. In the old days, they would have tossed anyone on the street for the slightest whiff of transgression. But things were different now, and he didn't want to cause an unnecessary scene, especially with his boss on the way. "Should we send some boys down to question her?" one of the guards asked. "Not now," Big Sal mused. "But keep a careful eye on our guest." Back on the casino floor, a small crowd had grown around Olivia's dice table. Some cheered in amazement as Olivia won an astonishing 20 rounds in a row, while others whispered in hushed tones, convinced this dashing woman with the wry smile must have some sort of trick up her sleeve. It seemed impossible, though. The dealer at the table was clearly annoyed, so unless he was a terribly good actor, they weren't in cahoots. How could she know what's under that dice cup every single time? Was a thought on everyone's mind. Olivia laughed quietly to herself, listening in on the thoughts of the crowd. "This is too easy." "6s," said the dealer, his face dropping further. The crowd roared with applause. "This is getting ridiculous," he thought. "After this many rounds of winning, this girl's going to make me lose my monthly bonus." Sven put a chummy hand on Olivia's back, overjoyed. "Chris, you weren't kidding. I should have never doubted you, little lady. You're some kind of psychic." "If only you knew, Sven," Olivia thought to herself. "Beginner's luck, I guess," she said coyly. There's no way they could possibly guess she was able to read the dealer's mind. "What are you going to do with all this money?" Sven asked. Olivia shrugged. She didn't care about the money in the slightest. She was just doing this to get Wyatt Newman's attention so she could see her beloved dog Polly again. "I don't know, maybe I'll save it for college or give it to a charity or something." Sven couldn't believe it, but Chris simply smirked. That was his Olivia. Always practical, always charitable. It was one of the many things he liked about her. He wasn't sure how she kept beating the house every single time. Was she just lucky, or did she always possess this unique gambling skill? Maybe she was just really good at reading the expressions of the dealer as he checked the dice. At this point in their relationship, Chris knew better than to question it. If it's one thing he knew, it's that Olivia was full of surprises and would always come out on top. The dealer shook his cup once more, laid it on the table, and checked his result. "Place your bets," he croaked in a weak voice. Olivia looked around the casino floor, frowning to herself. Why wasn't anyone coming to question her? "Where's Wyatt?" she thought. This clearly wasn't enough to get security's attention. She'd have to show them she could do this at other tables. "I'm bored with this table," Olivia said, scooping up her many winnings from the game table. "Let's go find something else to play." As the dealer wiped his brow and let out a small groan of relief, various murmurs and mumbles of disappointment could be heard from the crowd. They had begun taking their own bets on how far she could go and wanted to see this through. Olivia didn't care, though. She had bigger fish to fry. She had her plan to see through. She had to see Polly. As Olivia got up with her winnings, a handful of men clamored to sit in her seat. What had previously been an unlucky chair had clearly become the lucky spot in the house. Olivia laughed at the foolishness of it all. There was no such thing as luck in her mind. She made her own luck through hard work and determination. It didn't hurt to have a few supernatural powers, though. Olivia, followed by Chris and Sven, walked through the casino floor past the many tables and machines, scanning for her next target. The whirs and chimes of slot machines filled the halls. "What are you going to play next, Olivia?" asked Sven. This lady was on a hot winning streak, and he was determined to stick with her. Oh, I know. Queen of Hearts has amazing top-of-the-line computer blackjack. Or we haven't done any slot machines yet. What about that? Olivia shook her head. She hadn't tried, but she didn't think she could read the mind of a computer. If it had a mind at all, that is. That would be an absolute bust. Though, the thought amused her. Now, she needed a human target if she wanted her strategy to work. She looked up to a large flashing sign at the other side of the casino that read, God of Gambling. Under it, an older, surly-looking dealer dressed in a brilliant red vest and his silver long hair pulled back in a ponytail shook a dice cup. He had a remarkably serious look on his face and looked like the kind of dealer who would definitely make a fuss. He's perfect, thought Olivia. What about that one? She pointed. Whatever you say, little missy. Sven laughed as he playfully grabbed Olivia by the shoulders. Lead the way. Chris Jones furrowed his brow at this. Even though he knew he was probably being overly protective, he found himself getting jealous of Sven's familiarity with his fiancée. Despite the fact that his relationship with Olivia was meant to be transactional, he couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. He did like her after all. More and more each passing day, in fact. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, Chris thought. He decided to let it go and swapped out his empty champagne glass with a full one from a passing waiter. Is this seat taken? Olivia asked the surly old dealer. All yours, miss, he replied, cocking a thick gray eyebrow at her. He had already been alerted about this one. From the moment Olivia approached his table, someone from the top floor had buzzed his concealed earpiece that this guest in the evening gown might mean trouble. Got it, he replied in a hushed tone. Nothing was about to get past him. The dealer smiled politely at the young lady with a cocky look on her face and began to shake his dice cup. This time, Olivia could hear several dice being shaken, clanking around inside the metal cup. Despite his old age, the dealer deftly shook his nimble wrists with flair. He clearly had been working this table for some time. He looked more assured than the previous dealer Olivia had dealt with. He was a professional who took his job extremely seriously. After a moment, the dealer slammed the cup face down on the velvet table, and the dice made their final rattle as they settled into place. The dealer's eyes scanned the multiple gamblers at his table, landing finally on Olivia's own cool gaze. He lifted the cup just slightly, then said, Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Olivia let the corner of her mouth turn upwards, reading the man's thoughts. This was too easy. But just as she was about to place her bets, she looked down at the table to see an entirely unfamiliar grid pattern before her. Uh-oh, she thought. I might be able to read his thoughts, but I don't even know what this game is. She felt so stupid all of a sudden. The previous table had been simple, but this new one seemed much more complicated. She was the only one not placing chips on the table, but she knew she had to think fast. Her plan wouldn't work if she couldn't act quickly and win. She knew the dice in the dealer's mind, but she didn't know what the corresponding bet and point value was. Trying to use context clues and listening in on the other players' thoughts, Olivia made her best educated guess and placed all her chips in the bottom left-hand corner. The table gasped. This was a huge bet to make, and to be so sure and cool about it. Seeing Olivia's actions, the dealer's eyes moved slightly, but he did not say anything at all. He simply lifted the cup, revealing the dice before him, and looked at the points displayed. He stared Olivia dead in the eyes and said, 3 dice. The young lady wins. What the? Retorted a stunned Sven as a mountain of chips was pushed before Olivia. Little lady, you are not going back to New York City, you hear me? Just stay in Atlantic City for a year and you'll be stinking rich. I don't know about that, Olivia gawked. I'm just lucky, I guess. Not that she would ever considering stay here, but Olivia was sure that today she wouldn't be allowed back in the Queen of Hearts casino tomorrow, let alone for a year. With a streak this good, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm already blacklisted from every casino in Atlantic City by next week, Olivia thought. After a few more rounds, Olivia had won more money than anyone in the history of the casino. People were cheering, buying each other drinks. Everyone was celebrating but the surly old dealer, who quietly pressed the red button hidden under his table. Back in the security room above the casino, over a dozen guards had drawn their attention to Olivia's screen. There was no way of knowing how, but as far as they knew, this girl was cheating. Big Sal grumbled. All right, I'm going down. I want 2 men to go with me. I don't know who this girl is, but she's taking a trip to the inspection room. Yes, sir, the men said. Just at that moment, as Big Sal was about to head down, he felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. What now? He grumbled. As he saw the name on the phone, his heart sank. He gulped. Mr. Wyatt, he said. Are you still on your way? We're expecting you. I'm sorry I got held up, Wyatt Newman said from inside his limousine. How are things at the casino? Everything is normal, Big Sal started to say, but after hesitating for a moment, he came forward with the truth. We expect a woman is cheating in our casino, sir. Yes, said Wyatt. I received an alert from my app. A woman, you said. How many people are with her? It's just her and 2 young men, sir. Send me the camera footage, Wyatt said as he hung up. Big Sal grumbled, ordering one of the guards around. Sitting in his cushy limousine, Wyatt opened up the security footage on an app that was exclusively for monitoring via phone. He swiped through the footage until he landed on the culprit. He snarled. Wyatt curled his lips when he saw who it was. Something in him made him guess it would be these 3. Does he really have nothing better to do than annoy me? He thought. As he zoomed in on Olivia's face, his hand stroked the Siberian husky sleeping on his lap. You're not getting her, he sneered. Betty, it's mine. A large crowd had grown around Olivia Johnson's table at the Queen of Hearts casino. Everyone was amazed at this unheard-of winning streak this plucky young woman was on. She seemed so confident and poised as she made her bets, placing stacks after stacks of chips on the table. And every single time, she came up on top. A man cleared his gruff throat behind Olivia. Could you please pack up your things and come with me, ma'am? The Queen of Hearts Casino would like to have a word with you. The crowd began to gossip as they listened in on the conversation between Olivia and the square-shouldered man in a suit behind her. Big Sal was accompanied by 2 security guards, and any regular guest of the casino knew if Sal was on the floor, it meant something serious was going down. This they had to see. Olivia simply cocked her eyebrow. Finally, she thought. It's about time somebody took notice. I was starting to get bored again. Olivia turned with the perfect look of innocence on her face. I'm sorry, what seems to be the problem? I'm just enjoying myself at your fine establishment and was just about to place my next bet. Big Sal spoke in a quiet but weighty tone. We suspect that you are cheating in our casino, ma'am. Olivia's mouth dropped in feigned shock and offense. I'm sorry, maybe I didn't hear you correctly. Could you repeat what you said again? Louder this time? Sal huffed. Then this time loud enough so others could hear, he repeated. We believe you may be cheating in the Queen of Hearts casino, miss. We ask that you kindly come with us so we can figure this out. The large crowd that had formed around the table gasped. 1 or 2 patrons of the casino scoffed that they had known she must have cheated, or that she was getting what was coming to her. But Olivia played it off perfectly. Cheating? Olivia coolly sneered. She leaned back in her cushy chair. How could I be cheating? Show me your evidence if you're so sure. Please cooperate with us to sort this out, miss. We don't want any trouble. Big Sal was starting to get annoyed. This was attracting way too much attention as it was. He knew something was up with this girl, and he would get to the bottom of it. I'm just confused, Olivia said, wrapping her crimson-red fingernails on the armrest of her chair. Is no one allowed to win in the Queen of Hearts casino? Is that it? Her words were dripping with proclamation. She was trying to get a rise out of this burly security guard, and she could feel it working. If you can't afford to lose, then perhaps you shouldn't open the doors to the general public. Seems like a waste of everyone's time. Big Sal clenched his fist so tight, his massive knuckles were white. If this were a few years ago, I'd already be dragging you by the scruff, he thought. The city had been cracking down on casinos in the past 2 years, so they could not make any sort of move on the guests openly. If word got out Queen of Hearts casino staff was rough with their customers, even the ones who deserved it, they'd be in trouble. And with Wyatt, my boss, on the way, I can't afford a scandal, Big Sal thought. Olivia's eyes flashed after reading his thoughts. Looks like my little plan is working perfectly. I've made enough of a flash that Wyatt has no choice but to come all the way here just for me. I'm going to see my dog Polly again. All right, Olivia said. I'll go with you if I have to, but... The crowd hung on with her words with bated breath. They looked between this calm and collected Olivia and the brutish security guards who looked positively fuming. Only if, she continued devilishly, Wyatt Newman interrogates me personally. The crowd gasped in amazement. Everyone knew Wyatt Newman's position at the casino. Clearly, this woman had orchestrated all this just to meet with him. Was this some sort of rival of Mr. Newman's? Perhaps she was a young lover trying to attain his attention, another crowd member conjectured. Whatever the reason, it almost seemed like something out of some romance novel. Big Sal, however, was not amused. Who the hell does this girl think she is? Please cooperate, he asserted, putting his thick hand on her waist. Chris threw his champagne glass to the floor in anger. Don't you dare touch her, he said, moving between Sal and Olivia to protect her. That's my fiancé you're talking to. One of the strong guards tried to push Chris away, but in a flash, Chris swiftly kicked out his legs and he fell with a thump to the casino floor. Another came at Chris, but he hit the security guard in the chest, hard enough to briefly knock the wind out of him. The crowd was astonished. Some scattered in the fray, but others stayed to watch it play out. This was becoming a very interesting day at the casino. Fiancé? Olivia thought. He was so quick to defend me, and so open about our relationship. She felt herself swooning a little, but quickly regained her composure. I'll say it again, she playfully said as she twirled a poker chip in her red nail polish fingers. Either you show me this evidence that I cheated, or you have Wyatt Newman come down and talk to me personally. You, she said to Big Sal, are not worth my time. The casino went so silent you could hear a pin drop. Even the music had stopped. Many people in the crowd believed that this crazy woman who dared to act so brazenly in the casino must be dead for sure. She must be out of her mind to do all this just to get Wyatt Newman's attention. All right, I've had about enough of this. Do you think you deserve to speak to me like that? You're not worth even looking at Mr. Newman. Big Sal had worked hard to maintain his temper, but after all this, he could no longer suppress his rising anger. Sal lifted a massive fist in the air, but paused when he heard the click of a gun at his side. He turned to his right to see none other than Sven with the gun in his right hand, pointed at Big Sal's side, as he drank a glass of champagne with his left. You know, Sven mused, when I drink, my hands have a tendency to shake easily. You better be careful when you speak to the little lady. Sven had carefully concealed the gun so the crowd was unable to see. But by the terrified look on Big Sal's face, everyone knew something was up. Who on earth was this girl and her two dutiful gentlemen? Even Olivia was surprised at this escalation. She didn't think Sven had it in him to defend her like that. She made notes that despite his rough edges, Sven had definitely become a great ally to her. With Sven and Chris at Olivia's side, it seemed like there was nothing she couldn't do. "What seems to be all the commotion?" A voice boomed from the other side of the casino. The crowd turned and immediately began to applaud, as none other than Wyatt Newman descended the stairs of the casino. He wore a crisp white suit, and his face was as cold as ice. When he saw Wyatt, Big Sal gulped and his face went pale. "Boss," he said. Sven immediately retracted his gun and suavely acted like nothing had happened. "Sir, Big Sal began to say, embarrassed. "That'll be all, Salvador." Wyatt whisked Sal and his men away with a flick of the wrist. Big Sal grumbled. He gave Olivia one last glare. "This isn't over," he thought. As Sal clomped angrily back to his quarters and his men picked themselves up, Olivia considered messing with them with her telepathic powers. Maybe she could make them trip on the rug up the stairs and break his neck, or perhaps cause one of the many electric signs to fall down and electrocute him. There were so many ways to cause this horrible man harm, but Olivia thought better of it. She had promised herself a long time ago not to use her powers like that with this many people around. There were too many witnesses. Besides, she had already gotten what she wanted. Everything was going according to her plan. "Miss Johnson," Wyatt said, approaching the table. "What a surprise. And you seem to have won quite a handsome amount of money." Olivia shrugged. "Did I? I hadn't really counted. It's just money." Wyatt pursed his lips. "And I don't suppose your fiancé, Mr. Jones, cares about the money, right?" Wyatt searched Chris' face with a hint of blame in his eyes. Even if Olivia wanted his attention, was there any reason to make this big of a scene? Chris Jones reached out and wrapped an arm around Olivia's waist, causing her to blush. "My fiancé wants to earn some pocket money for herself. I'm just here to support her and watch." There's that word again, Olivia thought. Fiancé. He was being so chivalrous and protective in front of all these people. Maybe it was all an act as part of the deal, but Olivia couldn't help but feel there was something more. "Is there really any need to make a fuss about losing some money?" Chris continued. "It's not like we broke anything. You're lucky I went easy on your thugs for trying to touch her." Wyatt's red face looked even redder against his stark white suit. "Or maybe I should call the police on you for causing a scene? What about that?" Olivia stood up at this. She was no longer in the mood to play games with Wyatt. She came here with a purpose, and now was the time to see it through. "Where is she?" Olivia said, her chin held high. "Where is who?" Wyatt asked incredulously. "You know who. Where's—" But before she could finish that thought, a joyful bark echoed in the hall. Olivia's eyes lit up as she looked in the direction of the sound and saw a familiar Siberian husky bounding down the carpeted stairs from the second floor. As the two locked eyes, both of their hearts began to beat fast with happiness. Olivia remembered that fateful day when she first found poor Polly alone in an alleyway in New York City. Right from the beginning, they both knew this was a friend for life. She took Polly in her arms, back to the mansion where a bond had formed. "Woof," called out Polly, rushing Olivia back to the present day. Squatting down and opening her arms to meet her, happy tears streamed down Olivia's face. The sweet dog leapt into Olivia's embrace, almost causing her to topple over. Olivia laughed and laughed as Polly licked her face, her tail wagging back and forth in glee. "I missed you too, girl," Olivia said, rubbing and nestling her beloved dog all over. Chris smiled to himself watching the reunion. Wyatt, however, was not amused. "All right, that's enough," Wyatt remarked. He was not enjoying this display of affection one bit. "You've grown so much, you're taller and stronger than the last time I saw you, Polly," Olivia commented, noting how much bigger her dog had gotten since she last saw her. Made her feel both gratified and sad. She'd felt she'd already missed so much of Polly's life. "I said that's enough," snarled Wyatt, "and its name is Betty." Wyatt had his men disperse the crowd so normal gambling could resume, and he turned to Olivia with a cold look. "Let's discuss this somewhere private." The crowd was stunned and silent. Who was this young woman who felt bold enough to speak so callously to Wyatt Newman? It had a heart so big, a reunion with the dog could bring her to tears. And who was her fiancé that Wyatt seemed to address with such familiarity? Sensing that they were drawing too much attention away from his normally bustling casino floor, Wyatt leaned into the group, lowering his voice. "Shall we continue this conversation upstairs?" he suggested. Olivia glared at him, her arms still wrapped around Polly. She didn't want to go anywhere with this man. Now that she had Polly back, all she wanted was to take her and leave. As if he could tell exactly what Olivia was thinking, Chris cleared his throat and shot Olivia a look. He then turned to Wyatt himself. "It would be our pleasure to chat. You lead the way." Chris put on his fakest smile for Wyatt, knowing it would annoy him to no end. Wyatt scowled, then turned to escort the group to his office. Over his shoulder, he called out, "Come along, Betty." But the dog, too distracted by her happiness at seeing Olivia, stayed put. Wyatt glanced over at Olivia and the dog, trying not to show his disappointment, but Olivia could hear his thoughts. "Stupid mongrel. She never shows me that level of affection." Olivia smiled to herself before kissing Polly on the head and standing to follow Wyatt. With Wyatt, Olivia, Chris, and the others gone from the casino floor, the gossip began to die down, and things soon returned to the usual hubbub the Queen of Hearts was known for. All around, the sounds of dice clattering on tables, followed by cheers or muttered curses from gamblers situated at the vast tables. Just then, a group of chicly dressed people entered the casino. A man, in an expensive-looking suit, escorted a slender and very tall woman by the small of her back. A few men in less impressive suits hurried to keep up behind the two. The woman turned heads as she made her way through the Queen of Hearts, perhaps because she was still wearing sunglasses despite the late hour, or more likely because Naomi Bancroft was an internationally known supermodel. The man next to her was none other than Liam Blanc, the very man Naomi's manager, John, had been pressuring her to get close to. Liam smiled smugly as he pulled Naomi closer into him, completely unaware of how ridiculous he looked next to her. The contrast of his pudgy frame to her lean and delicate body, not to mention the fact that she stood almost a foot taller than him. But his money and power had long ago erased any feelings of inadequacy Mr. Blanc may have had. Naomi, unable to stand being so close to Liam, shimmied out of his clutch, but smiled widely as if she was just readjusting to get a better angle to speak with Liam. "Mr. Blanc, thank you again so much for dinner. I can't remember the last time I had such delicious lobster. I ate until I was completely full." Liam, oblivious to Naomi purposely making distance between herself and him, wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her back into him. Standing on his toes, he leaned into Naomi's ear and whispered, "I hope you didn't eat too much, because I have something you can fill up on later." Naomi's entire body tensed as she fought every urge to punch the little man clasping onto her waist. Instead, Naomi laughed coquettishly, placing a hand on Liam's arm. "Oh, Mr. Blanc, you are naughty, aren't you?" she said in her most playful tone. She then glanced over her shoulder, glaring daggers at her manager. Immediately seeing Naomi's discomfort, John caught up with Liam, interrupting him before he could say or do anything else inappropriate. "You know, Mr. Blanc, Naomi has walked in every major European fashion show. I really do think she's ready for New York Fashion Week," John said, hoping to get his meeting back on track. After all, John would never have encouraged Naomi, his favorite and biggest client, to degrade herself for such a disgusting man, if he didn't think it would benefit her tenfold in the end. "Don't worry," Liam said to John before focusing his attention back on Naomi. "As long as Miss Bancroft follows my directions, she'll be walking the hottest runways in New York Fashion Week." John was happy to hear this. It seemed his plan was unfolding precisely as intended. "Thank you, Mr. Blanc, she'll do you proud," John said before exchanging a small smile with Naomi behind Liam's back. John fell back with the rest of Liam's team, letting Naomi continue to work her wiles on the magnet, So, my dear, Liam asked Naomi, reaching up to twirl a piece of her hair around his finger. How are you enjoying Atlantic City? With his fingers still in Naomi's hair, Naomi could smell the lobster on Liam's hands. He obviously hadn't washed them since they left the restaurant. It was all she could do not to throw up in his face. If I have to endure such an unpleasant evening with such a pig, I might as well get the most out of it that I can, Naomi thought to herself. Well, the restaurant was lovely and the casino is quite impressive, but Naomi said before shifting her face to look forlorn, while still accentuating her incredible cheekbones. Oh, well, never mind, she added, trying to seem demure. What is it? You can tell me, Liam said, already filled with enthusiasm at the prospect of assisting a damsel in distress. Naomi looked out at Liam from under her full lashes and sighed. It's just, when I arrived at the airport today, I was already having trouble with the reservation for my car. But I was so excited to meet you that I decided to take a taxi. Then, when I was finally able to get a cab, this couple pushed me out of the way and took it for themselves. Naomi covered her face with her hands as if the memory of the event was too painful. Then, when I politely confronted the couple, the young man was so rude to me, well, I almost started crying right then and there, she continued, even managing to eke out a single tear. Liam, buying every word of Naomi's story, reached up and brushed the tear from her face. How dare they treat you like that? Do they know who you are? Liam said, and Naomi blushed, pretending to be bashful. Do you know who they were? Naomi thought for a moment. She wished she had the foresight to get the couple's name. No, but I'm sure I would recognize them if I saw them, she said, determined to scan the faces of every single person in that casino until she found them. The second you see them, you just let me know and I'll pop them one, Liam said, emphasizing his words so much that Naomi jumped. She smiled at him thankfully. Now, what do you say we play some craps? Liam said eagerly. He then slid his arm from around her waist and gave Naomi a smack on her rear before making his way to his favorite table. Naomi stood shocked with anger for a moment. Then she took it off, remembering why she was doing this. I'm going to be the star of New York Fashion Week, Naomi thought. And if I can take down those spoiled little brats who were so rude to me at the airport, then all the better. She smiled cunningly to herself as she made her way to join Liam. Meanwhile, up in the CEO's office of the Queen of Hearts Casino, Chris and Sven sat across from Wyatt at his large oak desk. Olivia, who, as far as she was concerned, had gotten what they came for, sat cross-legged on the floor with Polly, spoiling the dog with kisses and cuddles. Polly, unaware of her size, tried to crawl into Olivia's lap, but could not make herself fit. Oh, my sweet Polly, Olivia cooed to the giant creature. I'm afraid you're not a little puppy anymore. I can't hold you in my lap the way I used to. Polly looked up at her with big sad eyes, and Olivia smiled. It's okay, girl. Growing up isn't a bad thing. Just look how big and strong you've gotten. The dog let out a happy bark and licked Olivia on the cheek, sending a ripple of jealousy down Wyatt's spine. Olivia saw this, but kept herself from reading his thoughts any further. Anyone who sees Wyatt can know what he's thinking, Olivia thought to herself. For a man who owns a casino, he's got a pretty lousy poker face. Chris followed Wyatt's gaze and grinned. He loved to see Olivia so happy, and was pleased his plan of reuniting her with Polly had worked, at least for now. He dropped his smile as he turned his attention back to Wyatt. We still need your word that you're going to let Olivia take Polly home with her and end this. Wyatt's expression soured. Her name is Betty, he said, immediately returning his gaze to Olivia and the dog. And I think I've already been more than generous in letting the two of them see each other today. At this, Olivia squeezed Polly tighter. She couldn't stand the thought of losing her best friend again. She looked at Chris nervously, then heard him think, I have to secure the dog for Olivia. I'd do anything to make her happy. The corners of her mouth turned upward. Annoyed by Wyatt's stubbornness, Chris stood and made his way to the bar cart in the corner of the room. As he inspected the expensive whiskeys, he said, scoffed, "Wyatt, are you really that bored that you need to play games with my fiancé and a dog?" Catching on to what Chris was doing, Sven chimed in, "You know, Chris, with everything going on in Atlantic City right now, he might be trying to find ways to fill his time. There are 3 major conglomerates fighting for monopoly over the area, not to mention the government backing behind Glory World Entertainment already." Chris smirked at Sven. "That's right. Aren't they the ones who practically own the Vegas Strip?" Sven nodded, smiling coyly for Wyatt's benefit. Chris fixed his gaze on Wyatt now. "I also found out that Zeus has no backing behind your little casino. And without Daddy's help, you're gonna get buried by the competition." Wyatt swallowed, trying not to reveal his nerves. But Olivia was right. He did have a terrible poker face, and everyone, including the dog, could sense it. "I'm not worried," Wyatt lied. "The Queen of Hearts has always been one of the most popular casinos in Atlantic City." Chris and Sven exchanged a look. "All right, then." Chris trailed off. Following Chris's cue, Sven stood and brushed the wrinkles from his pants, preparing to leave. "I was going to offer some kind of assistance," Chris continued, "you know, should you ever need it. But since you're not worried, I guess you wouldn't be interested." Chris smiled at Wyatt facetiously as he watched the gears turning in the businessman's head. "Come on, Olivia, say bye to Polly," Chris said, then winked at Olivia as he turned to leave. "I hope whatever Chris is trying to do works," Olivia thought anxiously. "I can't give up Polly again, I just can't." Just as the 3 of them were about to exit the office, Wyatt called out, "Wait!" Chris grinned at his friends, then swiveled around to face Wyatt. "Okay, fine, she can have the dog," Wyatt said, defeated. Olivia smiled widely and dropped to her knees to hug the dog. "You hear that, Polly? You're coming home with me." The dog licked her face excitedly as Wyatt glared at the 2 of them. "But only on one condition," Wyatt threw in. Chris cocked an eyebrow, waiting to hear what Wyatt had to say. "She can take Betty for 2 months. Then I will come to New York to pick her up personally." Olivia stared at Wyatt, trying to see how much she could push back. "Fine," she said. "We'll leave tonight, and you can see Polly again then." "No," Wyatt interjected before the 3 friends could leave. Polly has a training session with one of the world's top trainers tomorrow. Would you please just stay one more day? You can even attend the session with her," Wyatt pleaded. Is this a trick? Olivia wondered to herself. Or does he really want Polly to stay for a training session? Despite not wanting to dip into his mind, Olivia felt she had to listen in to Wyatt's innermost thoughts. She couldn't help but look surprised at what she heard. He's being genuine, she thought. Wyatt really does want what's best for Polly. Olivia looked at Wyatt with a new sense of curiosity. "Fine, we'll stay," she said, then added, "And as for my chips, I'm keeping 3,000 to repay Sven for what he lost in your casino. The rest you can take back. Now you keep it all, you earned it," Wyatt said to Olivia, the faintest glimmer of respect in his eye. Maybe Wyatt isn't as evil as I thought he was, Olivia thought. Could it be that I had this guy all wrong? Olivia and Polly stayed up all night playing all of their favorite games. Olivia had forgotten how much energy Polly had, and the dog's joy was so infectious that it wasn't until nearly dawn that Olivia even realized the time. "Oh my gosh!" Olivia exclaimed when she finally saw the time. "Your training session starts in 3 hours and we haven't gotten any rest, Polly." Olivia quickly got ready for bed and snuggled under the covers. Polly looked at her from the foot of the bed and let out a sad whine. Olivia looked into Polly's eyes and felt her heart melting. "Okay, but just this once," Olivia said, letting Polly jump up into the bed and snuggle against her. Olivia knew she shouldn't let the giant husky get used to sleeping in a human bed, but she couldn't help herself. It felt so good to be reunited. The next morning, Olivia and Polly, both tired from lack of sleep, met the trainer who had been waiting for them. "You're late," the trainer admonished. "I've been waiting here for over 20 minutes. "I'm sorry, it's my fault. We went to bed late last night and only just woke up," Olivia explained. The trainer hissed to herself as she looked over Polly, who let out a loud yawn. Dogs thrive on a strict daily schedule, the trainer told Olivia while keeping her eyes on Polly. "Your dog will look to you to plan everything. When she eats, when she plays, when she wakes up, and when she sleeps. It's important that she can trust you to look out for her well-being." Olivia blushed, slightly embarrassed that she had let Polly come to the training session looking so disheveled. But after circling the dog a few times, the trainer smiled at Olivia. "Don't worry, I'll teach you everything you need to know to make sure you have the happiest and healthiest dog. When we put in the work with our dogs will be forever loyal to us." Olivia smiled. She liked this trainer already. 10 hours later, Polly and Olivia left the training session feeling exhausted but inspired. "I never knew how much work it took to be a good dog owner," Olivia said. "But it's worth it to ensure that you live a long, long time." She smiled down at the dog, who looked up at her with admiration. "Why don't we go outside and get some fresh air?" she said to Polly. "If there's anything I learned from that trainer, it's that dogs need at least 4 walks a day." At the sound of the word walk, Polly jumped in excitement. Olivia laughed. "With all your energy, I'd say we better make it 5. Polly wagged her tail enthusiastically as Olivia slipped her leash on and led her outside. Polly pulled on her leash eagerly as she and Olivia made their way down to the boardwalk. With Polly's newfound strength and size, it was all Olivia could do to keep them from falling. "Whoa, girl," Olivia called. "I guess it's time to start implementing what the trainer taught us," Olivia said, more to herself than to the distracted dog, now busy trying to chase a seagull. "Polly, heel!" Olivia shouted. But Polly didn't pay any attention, too excited by all the sounds and smells of the boardwalk. What was it the trainer said about using your voice? Olivia thought, trying to recall the intricacies of today's lessons. She said to lower the register of your voice and use a commanding tone. Olivia remembered. She cleared her throat, then she tried again. "Polly, heel!" Olivia commanded in a voice at least 1 octave lower than her usual timbre. Like magic, Polly stopped what she was doing and fell back in line with Olivia, happily walking at her owner's pace. It worked, Olivia thought. I guess I have to thank Wyatt after all. He really does have Polly's best interest at heart. Olivia smiled to herself as she walked at a comfortable pace with Polly perfectly in step. As Polly and Olivia were walking, a jet-black Bentley cruised lazily down the street beside them. Inside the tinted windows, Naomi Bankoff sat, visibly bored while Liam Blanc pointed out different Atlantic City landmarks to the model. "And right over there is the Ferris wheel." Liam pointed over Naomi with his pudgy finger, indicating for her to look out the window. Naomi indulged him, pretending to be interested in the theme park attraction, when suddenly something else caught her eye. "Stop the car!" she shouted to the driver, who came to an immediate halt. Naomi leaned over, rolling down the window to get a better look. "That little bit," Naomi whispered to herself as Liam interrupted. "What was that, beautiful?" he said, assuming she was enjoying his improvised tour. Naomi took a moment to fix her face into a more innocent look, then turned to Liam. "That's her, Liam. That's the girl who was so mean to me at the airport. She and her thug boyfriend stole my taxi and snubbed me right to my face," she said, looking like she might burst into tears at any moment. Liam looked out the window at Olivia, who was laughing and smiling with her dog. She looked perfectly innocent to him. "That girl? She can't be more than 17 years old. Are you sure you have the right person?" Liam asked, hoping that Naomi was mistaken. "Yes, I'm sure that's her, Liam. I wouldn't forget the face of someone who made me feel so insignificant," Naomi said before burying her face in her hands and sniffling to really sell it. Liam looked at her. He hated to see such a beautiful woman hurting like this. Don't worry, if she was as malicious as you say she was, then she deserves what's coming to her. Liam looked back out at Olivia. You're never too young to learn a lesson. Liam pulled out his phone and began dialing a number, while Naomi grinned devilishly to herself as she watched Olivia and Polly. You're about to pay for what you did to me, Naomi said, the corners of her mouth turning up even further as she thought about what Liam was capable of. Back on the boardwalk, Olivia was gleefully testing out more of the new tricks she and Polly had learned from the trainer. Good job, girl! Olivia squealed as Polly proudly gave her a handshake with her paw. Just then, a loud whirring sound filled the air, and 10 motorcycles pulled up to the curb right where Olivia and Polly were standing. Olivia watched apprehensively as some of the largest and most imposing men she had ever seen stepped off the bikes. Uh-oh, Olivia thought to herself. She had no reason to think these men had anything to do with her, but given her luck, they probably did. Olivia tried to quicken her pace, but the men were catching up. Polly, sensing Olivia's stress, began raising her hackles in defense. She emitted a low growl as the men started to close in. Where do you think you're going, Missy? One of the men said as he stepped in front of Olivia and Polly. Olivia stuck out her chest, trying to channel the same commanding attitude the trainer had taught her earlier. Maybe it works on people the same way, she hoped. My dog and I are just out on a walk, minding our own business. Now please step aside and we'll be on our way. Olivia tried to walk around the man, but he moved to block her way. She tried not to show her fear, but inside she was shaking. She looked at the man directly in the eye. You're an awfully ill-mannered man to be bothering a young lady this way. From out of nowhere, the man reached back and slapped Olivia across the face with the back of his hand. I don't think you should be talking about manners, you little brat. The man retorted back. He lifted his foot, about to kick Olivia in the side, when suddenly Polly lunged, sinking his teeth into the man's shin. The man let out a long wail as Polly twisted her neck back and forth, ripping her teeth through his flesh. Another man came from behind, reaching out to grab Polly off of his cohort, but Polly was too fast. The dog whipped around, jumping up at the man and clawing at his face. The man screamed and fell to his knees, clutching his eyes as blood streamed down his cheeks. 2 more men came in, trying to outnumber the dog, but once again, she was too fast. Polly latched onto one of the men's arms with her sharp canines, while using him as leverage to kick the other man with her back legs. Polly, still hanging onto the man's arm, sunk her teeth in as deep as they would go, causing the man to howl in pain. She then jumped down and turned towards the remaining men, baring her teeth and growling. The men looked at each other until one finally said, This is nuts. We aren't getting paid nearly enough for this. I'm out. He ran and jumped back on his motorcycle, hurrying away from the scene. Surely enough, the other men chickened out, one by one getting on their bikes to flee. Across the street, Naomi and Liam watched the scene from the parked Bentley. Naomi gave the man a cynical look. These are the best men you could find? She asked, her voice dripping in sarcasm. Liam's face turned beet red with anger. If there was one thing he hated, it was being embarrassed like this. That's it, Liam muttered to himself. Driver, give me the gun. The driver hesitated. I don't know, boss. Are you sure this is a good idea? Liam huffed with anger. He looked like he was about to explode. I'm your boss, and I say give it to me. Liam screamed at the driver. Naomi looked at Liam in shock. She hadn't expected him to handle matters himself. Liam, do you even know how to use that thing? A worried look flashed in her eyes. She wanted Olivia to learn a lesson, but she didn't want to risk her own life in the process. You're going to draw too much attention to us, Naomi protested. Liam ignored Naomi as he climbed over to get the best angle to line up his shot. There's a silencer on it. No one will hear a thing. Back on the boardwalk, Polly ran over to Olivia to check on her fallen owner. Olivia struggled to sit up, more from the shock of the events than from pain. Polly, that was amazing. You saved me, girl. Polly wagged her tail happily, licking Olivia with such enthusiasm she knocked her back down. Just as she did, a bullet silently whizzed by Olivia's head, hitting a tree trunk nearby instead. Olivia was so distracted by Polly's excitement that she didn't notice. Back in the car, Liam let out a loud series of curses. Naomi looked at him with genuine fear. She hadn't realized how unhinged this powerful man could be. "Okay, you missed. Maybe we should just take that as a sign and try again some other time," Naomi said, not wanting to be implicated in such a precarious situation. "I missed because you were distracting me," Liam hissed at the model. "Besides, I wasn't trying to hit the girl," Liam said, trying to cover his embarrassment at his own mistake. "Then what were you trying to hit?" Naomi asked, unconvinced. Liam raised his gun once again, peering through the viewfinder until his eyes locked onto something. "I wasn't trying to hit the girl," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm gonna hit that mangy mutt of hers." Liam had Polly's head perfectly in aim in the viewfinder. He smirked to himself as he prepared to pull the trigger. Back in his car, Liam seethed. "I'll make you pay, little girl." His voice shook with anger as he clenched his teeth, his finger hovering dangerously close to the trigger. Just as he was about to open fire, his head, half out of the window, collided with something icy and metallic. "Don't get too full of yourself," Sven taunted, his tone dripping with disdain, and gun aimed squarely at Liam's temple. "Who did you think was faster on the draw? Me? Or you?" Liam struggled to find his words, his grip on the gun trembling. You might be faster." Sven smirked, his gaze unwavering. "Oh, you've got more courage than brains. Planning to take on Mr. Newman's dog, too?" Liam's eyes widened in confusion. "Who?" he stammered, his mind racing to grasp the gravity of the situation. "Mr. Newman?" Wyatt Newman's name carried weight in Atlantic City, and Liam finally comprehended the enormity of his mistake. Liam's face drained of color, and his quivering hand reluctantly lowered the gun, his bravado crumbling. Sven clicked his tongue in mock disappointment. "Not much of a thrill, huh?" He had hoped for a more exciting showdown, but found only fear in Liam. Chris interjected impatiently, his voice tinged with annoyance. "Enough, Sven. Let Wyatt deal with these folks." "Fine," Sven conceded with a sly grin. Naomi, peering out of the car window, caught a glimpse of Chris's face and was overcome with dread. How could this dog really belong to Wyatt Newman? Both Liam and Naomi were left stunned, their minds spinning in disbelief as they grappled with the crushing reality of their predicament. At the park, Polly contorted a dozen rowdy hooligans. She tilted her head, flashing an expression that conveyed, "You okay?" "Not too shabby," Olivia commented, crouching to give Polly's head an affectionate pat. "Your skills haven't lost their edge. Pretty impressive." Polly's tail wildly wagged out of excitement. Chris observed the interaction between Olivia and Polly, his face softening into an affectionate grin. Regardless of the chaos around them, ensuring Olivia's happiness remained his top priority. Meanwhile, Sven saw an opportunity while Chris was distracted, and despite Chris's admonition, he decided to take Liam and Naomi back to the casino, his gun still drawn on them, though he now concealed it in his coat pocket. "You two, come with me," Sven said. Liam tried to protest, but seeing his henchmen were unable to help him, he gave up. "Now," Sven said. Soon, Sven marched Liam and Naomi into Wyatt's office, his leather coat billowing behind him like a dark omen. Liam and Naomi were breathless and wide-eyed, their steps quickened by the palpable sense of impending doom. His sense of urgency brooked no pleasantries. This was a matter of life and death. "Wyatt," he blurted out, his voice raw with tension. "I caught these two going after your dog, Polly." Sven pushed Liam and Naomi closer to Wyatt, grabbing their arms unyieldingly, like a vice of dread. Wyatt's eyes flashed with seething anger at the shocking revelation, his face a canvas of malevolence. He leaned forward in his leather chair, his knuckles turning white as he clenched the edge of his desk, a harboring of the storm brewing within. "These two?" he hissed, his voice dripping with menace, as though he were a predator who had just cornered his prey. Liam and Naomi exchanged nervous glances, their guilt-laden hearts hammering in their chests, the weight of their actions pressing heavily upon them like a leaden shroud. Sven regarded them with a predatory gaze, his eyes flickering with dark hunger, as though sizing up his next meal. A chilling silence stretched between the four of them, broken only by the ominous ticking of the antique clock on Wyatt's wall. Liam's voice trembled as he stammered, "Please, we didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was just a desperate mistake." Naomi, tears streaming down her face, pleaded, "We'll do anything to make it right, anything to spare our lives." Wyatt's lips curling into a cruel smile, revealing his appetite for power. "Anything, you say?" He leaned back, regarding them with a chilling detachment. "Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, don't they, Sven?" Sven stepped closer, his grip on Liam and Naomi tightening, their expressions contorted in pain. "You have no idea what kind of game you're playing," he growled, his voice a low, ominous warning. Liam's voice grew frantic. "We'll cooperate, tell you everything we know, help you in any way we can." Naomi added with desperation, "We will make it up to you by telling you anything we see at the casino. We could be your eyes, your informants." Sven's eyes narrowed, his patience running thin. "You think words will save you now? You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." Wyatt's grin widened, revealing the darkness lurking beneath his charismatic facade. "It seems you two have a choice to make. Cooperate and maybe, just maybe, you'll find a way to survive this. Or face the consequences." Sven glanced at Wyatt, a silent exchange of understanding between them. "Wyatt, we need to make sure they understand the gravity of their situation," Sven suggested, his voice low and dangerous. Wyatt nodded in agreement, his eyes locked onto Liam and Naomi. "Indeed, Sven. Let's show them what happens when you go after something I care about." Liam and Naomi exchanged terrified glances, realizing that their fate now lay in the hands of these two ominous figures. The room descended further into an eerie silence, ominous and pregnant with dread, as the shadows of their uncertain future loomed over larger. After landing in the Big Apple, Olivia mulled it over for a bit, and then decided to bring Polly back to her parents' place. Victoria's jaw nearly hit the floor when she saw Olivia walk in with Polly. "Olivia, where did you get that hulking furball?" Olivia flashed a charismatic smile. "Mom, you remember Polly?" Just then, Michael casually strolled out of the room, his charisma oozing. "Wait, Polly's back?" Olivia explained with a hint of mischief. "Yep, ran into Wyatt. Thought I'd let Polly crash here for a couple of months." Michael, the cool and collected dad, nodded knowingly. "Sounds like a plan." Victoria, with her sharp wit, couldn't let it slide. "Have you two even checked with the landlord about this? He was crystal clear, no pets when we rented this place." But before tensions could escalate, Michael took the lead. "Polly, come." With a melodramatic woof, the gigantic dog obediently trotted over to Victoria, gazing up with those big, soulful blue eyes, exuding an aura of innocence. Then Polly hung her head and emitted a soft whimper. After a suspenseful pause, Polly cautiously glanced at Victoria, like a guilty child seeking forgiveness. The whole scene had the melodrama of a guilty pleasure TV show. Victoria couldn't help but feel torn. She knew this was bending the rules, but she was powerless against that pleading look. "Oh, okay, I give up. You and your dog, seriously. Even a dog can bully me." Michael couldn't hold back a laugh. "Remember how Polly used to have me wrapped around her paw with that look?" Olivia laughed, pleased that Polly's charm had once again worked its magic. The golden holiday sun cast long shadows down the dining room window, illuminating Olivia's fatigued face as she sat down with her parents, Michael and Victoria. As she gazed at her parents' smiles, a wave of rejuvenation washed over her, infusing her with newfound energy. Victoria, ever the culinary maestro, took charge of dinner. She stood before the stove, tossing ingredients into a sizzling wok with the grace of a seasoned chef. She turned to Olivia, a mischievous twinkle in her eye, and said, "Come on, Olivia, give your mom's cooking a try. See if she's improved." Olivia couldn't help but chuckle as she complied, taking a big bite and exclaiming, "This is delicious." Victoria laughed warmly and responded, "If you like it, help yourself to more." School started tomorrow, followed by the monthly exams. Remember, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Your health comes first. Olivia nodded in agreement, her mouth still half full, and mumbled, "Yes, Mom." Suddenly, Michael interjected with a furrowed brow, asking, "Why talk about exams right after eating?" Victoria rolled her eyes at him, and then remembered something important. She said, "Oh, by the way, Olivia, there's something you probably don't know." Intrigued, Olivia looked up and asked, "What is it, Mom? Something I don't know?" Olivia's mind raced. Could it be about grandfather's return, the Park family, or even related to the 7 great families? Just as Olivia was about to read Victoria's thoughts, Victoria revealed, "Actually, your father's office was in the same building as mine. Isn't that quite a coincidence?" Olivia glanced at Michael. They shared a telling gaze before Michael chuckled awkwardly. Victoria still didn't know Michael was her new CEO. "Yeah, what a coincidence," she mumbled. Victoria smiled and added, "Yes, indeed. I only discovered it when I saw Michael downstairs after work." Olivia blinked in disbelief, asking, "What's the big deal? It's just a coincidence. It must be fate." Victoria playfully retorted, "Well, they say enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road." Michael was caught off guard and nearly choked on his rice, wondering why things had to be so complicated. As dinner continued, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that her parents' close proximity might lead to a collision of secrets. Secrets about her hidden powers, secrets about their mysterious past, and secrets that could change everything. She took a deep breath, realizing that the complexities of family dynamics were about to get even more tangled. In the midst of the Atlantic City casino's tumultuous chaos, where gamblers celebrated wins and mourned losses with deafening fervor, an unsettling tension brewed. Amidst the clamor, guttural cries echoed from Wyatt's office, an eerie contrast to the revelry outside. Wyatt landed a devastating blow to Liam's gut, sending him sprawling in excruciating pain. "Did you really think you could harm Polly, or lay a finger on Olivia?" he hissed, his eyes blazing with ominous intensity. Liam gritted his teeth and struggled to catch his breath. I just wanted a piece of the action, Wyatt. I didn't mean..." Wyatt interrupted him with another vicious punch, causing Liam's blood to splatter across the room. "Words won't save you now," Wyatt growled, his voice dripping with malevolence. Naomi, tears streaming down her face, pleaded, "Please, Wyatt, stop. He didn't mean any harm." Wyatt turned his steely gaze on her. "And what about you, Naomi? What did you hope to achieve by being part of this?" Naomi stammered, her voice quivering. I was just trying to get to New York for Fashion Week. Please, have mercy on me." Wyatt let out a menacing chuckle. "Mercy? You should have thought about that before getting involved." As Wyatt wiped the blood from his hand with a handkerchief, he motioned to a guard. "Take them to the basement," he ordered, his tone as cold as ice. The henchman nodded and began to lead Liam and Naomi away, their faces etched with fear. As they exited, a striking young woman in a modest dress entered. Her name was Olga, a tough and determined individual, with a gaze that bore the scars of past challenges. "Wyatt Newman, long time no see," she said with a sly smile. Wyatt raised an eyebrow. "Olga," he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. "What brings you here?" Olga took a step closer, her demeanor confident. "I'm looking for Chris and Sven. Where are they?" Wyatt's expression turned frosty. "You're too late, Olga. They've already returned to New York City." Olga's eyes narrowed, suspicion in her gaze. "What? Why did they leave without telling me? That doesn't make sense." Wyatt leaned in, his voice low, revealing his irritation with his sudden line of questioning. "You asked too many questions, Olga." Olga remained undeterred, her determination unwavering. "I'm not backing down, Wyatt. I need to find out what's going on." Wyatt, his patience wearing thin, sighed deeply. "Listen, Olga, they came and then they left. I don't know what to tell you. But I suggest you let me get back to my business, but—" He conceded reluctantly. "If you're going to follow them around, be careful what you dig into, Olga. Some things are better left alone." With that, Olga exited Wyatt's office, her mission to uncover the truth about Chris and Sven burning bright. If they wanted to leave her out, then she'd beat them at their own game. With fire in her eyes, Olga set her sights on New York City, and she headed towards Marshall High School with one person on her mind: Olivia.